Alright, so it's time for my biased stages for Smash Brawl, of course based on my biased roster. Here's a full list of everything we'll be discussing as usual. Something I should probably note before we dive in though. Obviously you can probably tell from this image that there are less new stages and more melee stages. I would have tried for everywhere is here when possible. We did have to make some cuts with Rare no longer working with Nintendo like they used to. The Banjo-Kazooie, Killer Instinct, and Perfect Dark stages were all cut. I also cut console floats just because at this point it would be outdated, since you would be missing the Wii and the DS, Game Boy Advance SP. I think Game Boy, what was it called, Mini or Micro? It was like a really small one too they could have had. And yeah, I don't think they would have went back and added to that stage, so it missed the cut. I also, as you can see, the first three stages would just be updated iterations as usual, except in addition to Battlefield and Final Destination, I would have had Metacrystal like that all the way through. But overall, the total number of stages is still 42. In Brawl was 41, but I'm counting the underground section of Mushroomy Kingdom that was only in Brawl as a stage, which would up the count to 42, and there's actually 22, including the revisions to Battlefield Final Destination and Metacrystal. 22 returning stages and 20 brand new ones, which I think is a nice balance too. I think that still gives us more new stages than Melee had. I think Melee had 17. So to kick things off with our Mario stages, there's really not much to say about this one. Delfino Plaza from Mario Sunshine, subtitle, Isle Delfino. I would keep it as is. It's a great stage. Represents a very iconic game that came out between the last two Smashes. After that, we got Luigi's Mansion, subtitle Boo Woods. I should have probably noted before too, but if you're new to this, I kept the subtitle system from Melee, which is why I'm still listing them. But once again, iconic game. Actually came out before Melee, but may have been a little too late to implement it there. These are the only two new Mario stages, technically, since there's also a Wario stage, but I do feel a little weird not having a dedicated Mario Kart stage, but I mean, some of these Smash stages also have Mario Kart variants, like Luigi's Mansion, like Delfino, like Bowser's Castle. I even used a Mario Kart background for that. The major change here is I would use a different layout. I don't like the Luigi's Mansion layout whatsoever. Once again, I'm not super creative a lot of the times. I'll pull an idea from another stage that didn't make the cut. In this case, I'm going to go with the Distant Planet layout, just instead of a flood on the left side, maybe it'll just be high winds or a swarm of boos, and instead of the Bulborb or whatever they're called, that's sort of in and out on the right, occasionally doing damage, it'll be a giant boo. I already mentioned there's going to be a Wario stage. Here it is. Similar to Delfino, I wouldn't change anything. Subtitle would be Variety Tower. And yeah, fun, unique layout and iconic locale. I think, yeah, because WarioWare, I believe, started in between the last two Smash games as well. I guess I was a little on the fence about including a Wario Land or Ware stage, but I obviously went through with this. However, hint hint, next time it's Wario Land's turn. So for Zelda, I actually went with two stages. Normally I went with one per franchise, except for Mario, just because he got so many sub-series and stuff going on. And Zelda, I just couldn't resist. Wind Waker and Twilight Princess are both great games. I was sort of back and forth on this one for a while. I was kind of thinking I would make the stage Palace of Twilight, but in the end I wound up going with Ordon Village. Subtitle Ordana Providence, I think is what it was called. This stage would actually take inspiration from Link's crossbow training, which in itself takes inspiration from Twilight Princess. It's the opening area of Twilight Princess. I forget if it was also the first area of crossbow training, but very iconic. And when I say it's inspired by crossbow training, I mean that You're going to go from left to right, and you're going to make stops. Kind of similar to a Mushroomy Kingdom stage, or Pac-Land. Just you would make frequent stops for a certain period of time, and then you would travel for a bit more, and then just at iconic locales, take a little break, and then you would go back and forth too. So you would probably start. I forget how it's laid out. It's been a while since I played these games. I think it was the spring, which then goes towards Link's treehouse. So one of those areas would be the first area, and the last would be the ranch where you get Epona. Considering we already have a ship stage from the very first game, actually, with our Fire Emblem stage, I decided to do something different for Wind Waker. Once again, there's a lot of good options. You can go with the introductory area, like Outset Island, or the Forsaken Fortress would have been cool too. I went with Dragon Roost Island. This layout, you would have to kind of take creative liberties to have this work. The layout would essentially copy Spear Pillar. In the bottom layer, you would see, I don't know what it would be called, but it was kind of like a little arch where you go sort of through part of the island, and after that, once again, it's been a while since I've played, but I think there was a statue or something to do with the Wind Waker itself. I think it's where you got one of the more useful songs, if I remember correctly. I think the Wind one. But you would see that in the background on the bottom layer. On the top layer, you would have sort of a bridge, walkable area. You would see one of the mailboxes as well. This being home of the Rito, who are known for being the post people of Wind Waker. It's part of what made this location iconic. That and the amazing song. Subtitle would be Great Sea. For the hazards, I feel like occasionally you might see smoke, and then lava would pour onto the top layer, making that part not a good time for a while. And then I guess similar to what I did with Luigi's Mansion, you can just sort of have wind sort of try to take people off that bottom platform occasionally as well. And you can maybe do something with the statue or whatever was in the background from the Wind Waker to sort of indicate that it's about to happen instead of having, the Pokemon of Spear Pillar. As for Fire Emblem, our new stage will be Castle Crimea. I guess the subtitle could be Mellore. I'm probably butchering that. I haven't played the Path of Radiance or Radiant Dawn games yet, or you could make the subtitle Pleiades, which is a little more people are probably familiar with that name than Mellore. But once again, we're going to borrow a layout from another stage that isn't here. This time particularly being Shadow Moses Island. So you have a top platform that's sort of just, another walkway that you can pass through, and then a bottom, and then you'll have two big pillars that'll be destructible and they'll reconstruct themselves. And rather than a Metal Gear messing around in the background, you might see, I don't imagine the background being so close to you. It'd probably be similar to the second stage of Castle Siege, where there's a bit of a background and you might see different Fire Emblem characters there. I guess I'm just sort of reading the wiki now. I guess you can also maybe call it Halls of Justice. So yeah, I don't know what would be best. Once again, I'm leaning towards Castle Crimea, subtitle Pleiades. For Kirby, we're going to be going with City Trial. Subtitle, I guess there's a couple of different options here. The one I'm leaning towards is just plain and simple Air Ride. But I don't know, maybe you can call it, is it supposed to take place in Dreamland? I'm not really sure. Planet Popstar, or the other one that stands out for me as a possibility is Rail Stations, because a lot of the stage is going to be focused around the rail stations. This is one of the few sort of unique ideas I had. So I just remember the rail stations, just sort of like a quick travel system in Kirby Air Ride if you haven't played it, being a really iconic part, and it could obviously bring you to many of the different iconic locations from, parts of the city, or there was a drop-off point in the woods near the volcano, underground, in different just sort of weird areas with a lot of different platforms, and you just have various different layouts. You might have just sort of one big warp star spawn in and out, travel along the rails, and drop you off at the next station with various changes to the layout depending on where you are, whether it be, just new temporary platforms or, something that's actually part of actual city trial itself. Our new F-Zero stage will be Casino Palace, subtitle Emerald Cup, which is the particular layout that the stage is going to be based on. I think there was a couple different Casino Palace layouts. Actually, just reading the wiki here, it would be based off of double branches, not split oval. Actually, I think Smash, because I think it's Port Town, but the layout is Arrow Drive. So I don't know, maybe you could or should implement double branches into the name or into the subtitle or something too, I guess. Once again, that stuff sort of subjective and not too big of a deal, but still fun to speculate on. But anyway, this would pretty much be identical in concept to Port Town Arrow Drive, which is sort of inspired by Mute City. It's just I just thought Casino Palace was a cooler location. More standout and unique, I guess. Our next stage is going to be Pleiades, or however you pronounce that, cruiser, subtitle Corneria. So this is an interesting deal. First off, this is essentially Lilac Cruise, just reworked a little. To tell you the truth, I didn't even know the ship until I was researching stuff from Lilac Cruise even had a name, but I don't know, I would make it more at the forefront with the stage itself, because why not? So people are actually aware of the name of that ship. And like I said, subtitle would be Corneria. We don't have a Corneria stage yet, so rather than cruising through the Lilac system through various locations, you would be focused in Corneria itself, particularly probably based on Star Fox Assault. That seems the most likely. I haven't really played Assault, Adventures, or Command. I assume it would probably be based on one of those three games, though. With Assault maybe being the easiest because it's the latest, and it was also on a home console. It was the latest on a home console. Command was the latest. Hey, we're back on the Smash Wiki with another easy stage. Once again, I don't know too much about Pokemon, but I feel like the Pokemon stadiums were great ideas, great layouts. Iconic for Smash itself. And yeah, I wouldn't really change a thing with Pokemon Stadium 2. In fact, in my iteration, it's the only new Pokemon stage, as sort of hinted at earlier. Metroid's finally in the game in my biased iteration, so obviously we need a stage. I was mixed between this and the stage you're going to see in Smash 4 from Prime. I didn't know which one they would represent first, similar to the Wario situation. Subtitle here would be Planet Zebes, or Zeb, or however you pronounce it. And yeah, I went with the classic one this time, almost the opposite of the approach that I had for Wario, but I guess at least these games are releasing on Virtual Console. I don't think any of the Wario lands were at the time. And I don't really know much about Metroid to really expand upon this, so hopefully that's a solid pick. Advance Wars was also introduced at this point. So the stage I've dubbed Orange Star Base, subtitle Cosmoland. So with this one, I think the picture I use, and you can kind of see it up there, like I sort of based around the bases that are on the map for Advance Wars, which would be essentially an orange-themed city-esque area. The particular layout I decided to use, because I had a hard time fitting it anywhere else. It's a bit of a stretch still, but Mario Circuit from Brawl, later Figure 8 Circuit. I can kind of picture it having, different, tanks and jeeps flying by instead of Shy Guys, and maybe instead of them making, jumps on the other part of the stage, you can maybe have some aerial, like helicopters and planes pass by that area with some, orange buildings and stuff in the background instead of, the racetrack stuff. Animal Crossing, another new franchise for us on the roster. This was a tough one too to sort of narrow down, but I I kind of wound up liking the idea of having the museum be the stage to sort of showcase some of the different activities and collectibles of Animal Crossing, which is a big part of the game. I picture the layout being similar in a way to Golden Plains from 3DS, where you would have, you know, a location and then you'll scroll to a new location, except rather than going, you know, center, left, center, right. In this case, you just sort of go either clockwise or counterclockwise, it doesn't matter, through a square of 4 different areas. And they would have, you know, different layouts with, you know, temporary platforms and such, with, you know, backgrounds based on the different exhibits. So the first area, I imagine this stage, because Smashville had a lot going on with it too, so I picture this stage almost having a day and a night backgrounds. So the first area will always have blathers, but on the side you'll either have Crazy Red and a painting, or, you know, just other artwork, or you'll have Celeste at night with her telescope, or Kelsey. Once again, I'm terrible with names. If you go directly down and it's during the day, you'll have Brewster always, but on the other side, you'll have Fossils. But if it's at night, or maybe you even lock it to, I don't remember when KK comes, it's like Saturday at 8 or Friday at 8, or maybe it's earlier or whatever, but you can have KK in the background. I kind of like the night idea better. I know it isn't as close to the other games, but I don't know. I just like it better. And then you can have to the right, but also still in the lower level, you would have the aquarium. And above that, you would have the bug exhibit. And then you can just have different bugs and fish on display. Like maybe during the day in the bug exhibit, you'll have some of the beach trees and bugs in that, but at night you'll have just regular city trees and bugs, and something similar in the aquarium. So the iconic Smashville layout isn't gone. I instead gave it to Me Plaza because I just didn't really have any other ideas for a layout, and I figured a nice simplistic layout would fit here pretty well. And rather than having different animals in the background, in the city, you'll have sort of a Me Plaza-esque theme and some of your created Me's in the background. I forgot to realize, I got so in-depth with the Animal Crossing stuff, I forgot to mention the title would be, I was debating just museum, or if I want to specify Blathers Museum or something. I decided to call it Nearby Museum as a sort of play on the pun from the original Animal Crossing, where you would mail letters to Faraway Museum. And subtitle would just be Wild World, which was the latest game at the time. Me Plaza, that would be the name, and the subtitle would be Me Channel. Living Room from Nintendogs makes its debut a game early. We had a couple spots after adding, you know, like I said, pretty much a stage per franchise left, and I wanted to focus on franchises that I really just couldn't see getting a playable rep that also had some popularity and relevance, and Nintendogs definitely fit, especially at this time. So yeah, no changes. It's a fine layout. I did decide to change the name to Designer Condo, subtitle Interior Decorator, which I believe is what the area is based on, just sort of getting into more specifics from the game. I've never played Nintendogs, but from what I've looked up, that's what I sort of gather. And like I said, I don't know if I've said it, but I'm not one for just sort of more generic titles. I wanted to specify it, narrow it down a little more. So we've got a couple new retro stages based on IPs that are playable. Excitebiker was in the previous game as a costume for Mock Rider, so we're going to finally give the Excitebiker a stage. I don't know where this layout comes from. I feel like I've seen it before. I've sort of had it in my head that this is how an Excitebike stage would look like for a really long time. But yeah, basically you have the hill, got GIMP back out and everything for this. Since I don't know where to find it, if I did get it somewhere else, maybe it is something I came up with on my own a long time ago, but yeah. And then you have, this is just rough dimensions too, but then you got a little section above the hill where you can't pass down, and another section where you can. That little gray area is supposed to indicate, I remember in Excitebike there was like dirt areas that would sort of slow you down in that. So I imagine that there would be one or two here. That's just an idea of where it could be. I think it would be a little smaller maybe than that, but like I said, rough sketch. And then another minor thing is that you'll have a couple Excitebikers race on through, presenting a hazard, maybe kind of similar. It'd probably be less so, but I'm thinking of F-Zero Grand Prix from Melee's Adventure Mode. There would only be like 4 of them, but sort of similar premise where there's a couple safe areas you can hide. I had a hard time coming up with subtitles for some of the retro stuff. The stage would be called Excitebike Arena. Subtitle I went with was Track 4B for Section B, which is how, I forget why I picked that one in particular. I remember going through the different backgrounds, and that's the background I wanted for the stage from the game. I forget exactly why. It was either because it was unique compared to some of the other ones, or maybe it was the one from the box art or one of the more iconic ones. Either one of the two. I mean, maybe you could change and have different themes, but then I guess the subtitle wouldn't make sense. So yeah, I don't know what you want to do there. It could be handled a couple different ways. Duck Hunt is here as our Banjo-Kazooie replacement, so we need a stage. Duck Hunting Range, subtitle, Game A. Once again, maybe there's better ideas out there, but this would be a bit different from the Smash one, though. I imagine it being completely reimagined in like sort of 3D, maybe similar to the trailer, not keeping the 2D sprite stuff, with a bit more of a focus, maybe. I forget, can you jump on the grass like above the regular dirt area? Well, if you can, you don't do that here. And there would hopefully be maybe a little more of a reinterpretation, maybe make the bush on the right a little bigger, maybe sort of spread out some of the platforms on that tree, make them a little bigger, and have some walk-off ledges and not sort of that gray background is the way I would handle it. After that, we got Pictochat, which I think it was a great idea, and we already kind of have sort of a Wii-centric stage with Mii Plaza. Obviously, it's also kind of here because of the Miis, but I think it makes sense to also have a DS-focused stage. I've been back and forth on the title. I think the subtitle would be Pictochat. The title, I can imagine being chat room and then the smash symbol, or smash room, sort of playing off of, entering specific chat rooms in Pictochat itself. Or I guess I actually see right there, it says entering chat room A, so maybe it could be chat room A, or maybe that makes the chat room with the smash symbol make more sense, because then you replace the A or B or whatever with the smash symbol. Or maybe you can do that either way and still name it Smash Room. I don't know. Something I'm back and forth on that. Right now I'm leaning towards Smash Room, because I can imagine some difficulty calling it, having the name, identifying it when you have the name chat room and then the smash symbol itself. But once again, I'm sure you can occasionally ask me, and I might be in a different state of mind with this opinion. Finally, we're at our third-party stages. So first up, we got Sonic and Green Hill Zone. I wouldn't really do much to the layout. Once again, I think it's a good representation of Sonic. I actually kind of like the layout too, if I'm telling the truth. I know this is one you popularly see redesigned with certain fan projects, but the only thing I would change is in the background. I just wouldn't have Silver with Tails and Knuckles. I don't know, maybe I would have Amy, maybe I'd have Shadow if he's not an assist, which I'm leaning towards having someone else in that role. I don't know, maybe you can have Knuckles and Tails chasing down Metal Sonic. I don't know, I'm just not as big of a fan of Silver. I mean, I guess Sonic 06 is kind of new at the time and might be what they want to push, and you don't necessarily know the damage is done quite yet. But I don't know, I'm more in favor of going with the legacy character for this role. And the final stage is Warp Room. Oh yeah, subtitle for Sonic would be South Island. Subtitle here would be Wumpa Islands. This is kind of a unique layout, kind of not. It's pretty much inspired by Castle Siege, except you would go back to the central area. So your Warp Room, you'll warp to an iconic crash level, and then you'll warp back to the Warp Room, warp to a different level, and then, I don't know, you would do that maybe one more time. I don't know, it would be too much. I don't know, I can picture the design maybe being a unique iteration, sort of taking elements from the various warp rooms in Crash Bandicoot, but perhaps, I don't know what game you might particularly base it on, because I feel like people would probably want it based on the trilogy, but then at the time that's in a little bit of a weird state now, so maybe you would base it more on the Wrath of Cortex or the Huge Adventure in terms of the levels you pick. But I guess the GBA ones, the levels in those games are more based on the trilogy ones, so yeah, different few ways you can interpret this, but that's the general sort of concept and direction we would be going in. Have a little more to go through next time. Had to sort of try to fit 2 stage rosters here in our preview, because we're going to be hopefully in one part. Maybe I'll make it to it. Depends on how it goes. Talking about the 3DS and the Wii U stages, particularly focusing on the new ones, plus DLC. So still got to clean up these images a little bit and get DLC sorted out. So we'll see you when it all comes together.